The year is 1943. Across the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Pacific, the roar of radial engines and the stutter of machine guns are the only constants in a war unlike any other. For 2 years, one aircraft had reigned supreme, the Japanese A6M-0. It was a symbol of national pride, an extension of the samurai spirit, believed by its pilots to be invincible. But on a seemingly ordinary day, February 14th, over the Solomon Islands, everything changed. A new American fighter, the F4U Corsair, entered the arena, and with its distinctive bent wings and fearsome growl, it didn't just challenge the Zero's dominance. It shattered a myth, and in doing so, began the systematic psychological and physical dismantling of an entire air force. Imagine the scene. A Japanese naval aviator, his hands still trembling from the raw violence of recent combat, records a cryptic, dangerous entry in his flight log. The new American fighter is not what we were told. It is not inferior. It is something beyond our understanding. These weren't just words. They were the first cracks in the edifice of Japanese aerial supremacy, a concession of awe and terror that, if discovered by his superiors, would have been met with severe punishment. But this pilot, and many others, had just come face to face with the future of air combat. A future where speed, firepower, and sheer industrial might would eclipse the most skilled individual pilot. For years, the Zero had been an aerial dancer, light, agile, capable of turning inside anything the Allies could put into the sky. It had carved a path of destruction from Pearl Harbor to Singapore, racking up kill ratios that bordered on the mythological, often 10-1 or better in Japan's favor. Commanders like Mitsuo Fuchida recorded impossible victories, fueling a belief in divine superiority. Even Japan's leading ace, Hiroyoshi Nishizawa, a man credited with 87 confirmed victories, once wrote to his younger brother, echoing the sentiment of an entire nation. The Zero is the perfect weapon, harmonizing with the pilot's spirit like a samurai's sword. The Americans build flying trucks, heavy, clumsy, without soul. They cannot match our unity of man and machine. This wasn't mere bravado. For a significant period, the statistics backed it up. The Zero's phenomenal range meant it could escort bombers to unprecedented distances, something American planners initially deemed impossible. Its turn radius was almost half that of its primary early American counterpart, the F-4F Wildcat. It could climb to 15,000 feet a full minute faster. Lieutenant Koname Harada, a Pearl Harbor veteran with 19 victories, remembered feeling invincible in the cockpit. The aircraft responded to thought, not just control input. We could dance in the air while the Americans lumbered. Their pilots were brave, but flew cattle compared to our thoroughbreds. This perception of effortless mastery, of a spiritual connection between pilot and machine, was deeply ingrained. It wasn't just about winning battles, it was about embodying a national philosophy in the skies. But even as these lofty sentiments were being penned, the foundations of this supremacy were beginning to erode. The devastating Battle of Midway in mid-1942 was a catastrophic blow, not just in the loss of 4 irreplaceable aircraft carriers, but in the irrecoverable loss of 110 of Japan's most seasoned naval aviators. These were men who had honed their skills over a decade, some with over 1,000 hours of flight time and extensive combat experience in China. They were the irreplaceable intellectual capital of Japanese naval aviation, and their demise created a vacuum that Japan's rigorous, yet inherently slow training system simply couldn't fill. Then came the ominous technical reports filtering back from the front lines. Commander Minoru Genda, the architect of Pearl Harbor's tactical brilliance, noted in a classified report that American fighters were becoming increasingly difficult to shoot down. Early encounters with the new F-6F Hellcat hinted at a disturbing trend. These American planes seemed to absorb punishment that would have torn a Zero apart. Pilots reported riddling American aircraft with dozens of 7mm rounds, only for them to fly away, seemingly unscathed. The Guadalcanal campaign further illuminated another terrifying reality: America's seemingly inexhaustible numerical superiority. Where once Japanese pilots might face equal or even inferior numbers, by early 1943, they were routinely encountering American formations of 20, 30, even 50 aircraft. The poetic, almost spiritual Bushido code of individual warrior prowess, however noble, could not stand against the harsh arithmetic of industrial production. It was a paradigm shift that Japan was slow and ultimately unable to grasp. The focus on individual skill and a perfect lightweight machine had blinded them to the brutal reality that war was becoming an industrial marathon, not an elegant fencing match. And then, on that fateful Valentine's Day in 1943, the F4U Corsair entered the fray. 12 F4U-1s from VMF 124, having arrived at Guadalcanal just 2 days prior, escorted PB-4Y liberators on a bombing mission. The initial engagement, a melee over the island, saw mixed results. Both sides suffered losses, but the Japanese pilots tasted something new. A formidable opponent that didn't play by the Zero's rules. The technical specifications of the Corsair were, to Japanese analysts, nothing short of shocking. The F4U-1's Pratt & Whitney R2800 double WASP engine churned out a staggering 2,000 horsepower. To put that into perspective, the Zero's most common engine, the Nakajima Sakai 12 in the A6M2, produced just 950 horsepower, and even the later A6M5's Sakai 21 managed only 1,130 horsepower. This wasn't a marginal difference. It was an astronomical gap, more than double the power output. This power translated directly into devastating performance advantages. A maximum speed of 4 atma for the Corsair, compared to the A6M20's 331 mph, the A6M5's 351 mph. This wasn't just faster, it was a completely different class of speed. A climb rate to 20,000 feet in a mere 7.5 minutes, while the Zero struggled to reach the same altitude in 12 minutes. This meant Corsairs could dictate the terms of engagement, always possessing the advantage of height. The ability to maintain full control in dives exceeding 450 ms, a maneuver that would cause the Zero's control surfaces to literally freeze above 350 meters, making it a death trap. These raw numbers didn't just represent superior engineering. They rendered the Zero's traditional tactics obsolete overnight. The Zero's strength lay in its unparalleled maneuverability at slower speeds. But against a Corsair, those slow-speed dogfights rarely happened. Major Gregory "Pappy" Boyington, the legendary commander of VMF 214, the Black Sheep Squadron, who would score 28 victories, was a key figure in these early Corsair operations. He eloquently summarized the emerging tactics in his autobiography, Ba Ba Black Sheep. The Zero was a dream to fly and fight in if you stayed slow. But we didn't stay slow. We came in high and fast, shot and kept going. This was the essence of boom and zoom, a tactic where Corsairs would dive from altitude, using their immense speed to make a high-energy firing pass. Then leverage that excess energy to climb away before the more nimble, but slower, Zeros could react. It was like a heavyweight boxer dancing around a nimble fencer, landing crushing blows and never getting caught in a close-quarters engagement. This was a direct, brutal counter to the Zero's entire design philosophy. The shifting balance of power was dramatically underscored on April 7, 1943, during Operation Igo, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto's last major offensive. He launched 224 aircraft against Allied positions at Guadalcanal, a desperate attempt to regain aerial superiority. They were met by 76 Allied fighters, including the formidable Corsairs. The results were devastating for Japan. 39 aircraft lost versus just 12 Allied fighters destroyed. It was a massacre, a foretaste of the future where American industrial might and tactical innovation would systematically dismantle Japan's elite air arm. By May 1943, Japanese technical teams began examining captured Allied aircraft and field reports, and what they uncovered was truly horrifying. The Corsair wasn't just faster, it was a flying tank, a testament to industrial capabilities Japan simply couldn't match. Its armor plating, weighing a hefty 155 pounds, protected the pilot, oil tank, and oil cooler, more weight than some entire Japanese trainer aircraft. The bulletproof glass windscreen was a solid 38 mm thick, capable of shrugging off the very 7.7 mm machine gun rounds that Zero pilots were relying on. Crucially, the Corsair featured self-sealing fuel tanks, layers of rubber designed to expand and seal punctures, preventing the catastrophic fires that claimed so many Zero pilots, whose tanks offered virtually no protection. But perhaps most devastating was the armament. 6 Browning M2 .50 caliber machine guns, each firing rounds with 8 times the kinetic energy of the Zero's 7.7 mm guns. With 350 rounds total, the Corsair carried enough ammunition for 30 seconds of continuous fire, triple the Zero's capacity. The sheer stopping power of these 50 caliber rounds, especially the AN M2 armor-piercing incendiary variants, which could penetrate 21 meters of armor at 500 yards, contrasted starkly with the Zero's almost non-existent armor. A Corsair could absorb punishment and deliver overwhelming firepower. A Zero was a fragile, elegant machine that burst into flames from a single, well-placed shot. It was a testament to two radically different design philosophies. American engineers focused on pilot survivability and overwhelming force, while Japanese designers prioritized speed and maneuverability at all costs, largely due to resource limitations. This cost was often the pilot's life. By June 1943, intelligence reports reaching Japanese naval headquarters painted a picture of American production that defied comprehension. The United States would produce an astounding 12,571 Corsairs by war's end, with thousands of variants continually improving. Mitsubishi and Nakajima, by contrast, would manufacture just 10,249 Zeros throughout the entire war, a number that sounds significant until you consider that American production lines were continuously churning out better aircraft. The F4U-1A introduced better visibility. The F4U-1C mounted 20mm cannons. The F4U-1D could carry 4,000 pounds of ordnance. The F4U-4, arriving in late 1944, boasted a 250 horsepower engine and a fearsome top speed. Meanwhile, the Aisin, Japan's most produced Zero variant, represented only marginal improvements over the original 1940 design. Innovation on the Japanese side was stagnant, a fatal flaw when facing an enemy whose industrial base was a relentless engine of continuous improvement. This technical superiority exposed an even deeper, more catastrophic flaw in Japanese naval aviation doctrine: the inability to replace experienced pilots. Japan's pre-war training program was legendary for its rigor, a 95% washout rate ensuring only the absolute elite earned their wings. But this system, while producing superb individual aviators, could only generate about 100 pilots per year. By 1943, the United States Navy's expanded training program was producing a mind-boggling 2,500 pilots monthly. These American pilots received 600 hours of flight training, including 200 hours in advanced fighters, before seeing combat. Japanese replacement pilots by 1943 averaged a meager 100 to 150 hours total flight time. By 1945, some desperate kamikaze pilots would have as little as 40 hours. The mathematics were stark and inexorable. Each experienced zero pilot lost meant replacement by someone with a fraction of the training. Each Corsair pilot shot down was replaced by someone with equal or superior training. The qualitative gap, already immense due to technology, widened exponentially with each engagement. It was a strategic hemorrhage of human capital that Japan could simply not plug. Rabaul, Japan's fortress in the South Pacific, became the grim graveyard of Japanese naval aviation. Between October 1943 and February 1944, continuous battles with Corsair-equipped squadrons led to loss rates that systematically annihilated Japan's remaining cadre of experienced pilots. The statistics from this period are not just numbers. They tell a story of systematic annihilation, of an entire elite force being wiped from the skies. On November 11, 1943, Allied carrier air groups, including Corsairs, struck Rabaul's harbor and airfields. Of 270 Japanese aircraft available, 35 were destroyed and 40 damaged. By December, when another major raid occurred, Japanese forces could mount only minimal opposition. The few interceptors that dared to rise were quickly destroyed. By January 1944, Japanese pilots, once eager for combat, were refusing to engage Corsairs unless they held overwhelming numerical superiority. A complete reversal from 1941, when single zeros would boldly attack entire enemy squadrons. The psychological defeat was as thorough as the physical one. While Corsairs primarily served with land-based Marine squadrons at this point, and didn't participate extensively in the carrier versus carrier dogfights, the Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944, largely fought by F-6F Hellcats, served as a stark demonstration of the complete reversal of aerial supremacy that new American fighters had achieved. The results were catastrophic for Japan. 445 Japanese aircraft destroyed versus 30 American aircraft lost in combat. The kill ratio had reversed from 10.1 in Japan's favor in 1941 to nearly 15.1 in America's favor. Japanese naval aviation never recovered from this defeat. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, as it became known, was the sound of a once proud Air Force being utterly decimated. By late 1944, the psychological collapse among surviving Japanese pilots was almost complete. They had entered the war as members of the world's premier naval aviation force, brimming with confidence and a sense of destiny. They now flew knowing they were inferior in every measurable way. Saburo Sakai, Japan's leading surviving ace, a man of incredible resilience with 64 victories, articulated this despair in his memoir, Samurai. We had lost our edge in equipment, in numbers, in pilot quality, in everything. The appearance of the new American fighters meant death for our younger pilots. they had neither the skill to fight nor the aircraft to escape. It was a profound admission of hopelessness from a man who had faced the best of the Allies and survived. The introduction of the F4U Corsair in October 1944, with its 2,450 horsepower engine, or 2,660 horsepower with water injection, and 446 mph top speed, removed any remaining illusions. This variant could outperform the Zero in literally every single flight regime. The psychological journey from elite fighter pilots to suicide attackers, the tragic path to the kamikaze, represented the ultimate horrifying admission of defeat. Vice Admiral Takejiro Onishi, who organized the first kamikaze units in October 1944, explained the brutal logic in a staff meeting. If we continue conventional attacks, we will lose 100% of our aircraft for negligible enemy losses. If we employ special attacks, we will still lose 100% of our aircraft, but may inflict meaningful damage. This wasn't about courage or honor. It was about the cold, hard, desperate calculus of a completely outmatched force. Lieutenant Yukio Seki, who led the first official kamikaze mission, wrote before his death, "Japan's future is bleak if it is forced to kill one of its best pilots. I am not going on this mission for the Emperor or for the Empire. I am going because I was ordered to." This poignant confession strips away any romanticism, revealing the tragic burden placed upon young men forced into a hopeless fight. Post-war analysis starkly illuminated the technological chasm. Maximum speed, F4U 1945 at 446 Metis 5C, 1943 at 351 high service ceiling, 4100 ADS/FD versus 36250 flata at rate of climb, 307 asset mine versus 2625 foot men, power and 2450, HP 760 HP with water injection versus 1130 HP, empty weight 19,250 lbs versus 4,136 lbs, reflecting armor and robust construction. Armament, weight of fire, 6.7 lb/second, SARS, 2.3 lb/second. Armor protection, 155 lbs ver 0. Fuel tank protection, self-sealing, vers none. The industrial statistics that emerged after the war revealed the impossibility of Japan's position. In 1944, the United States produced 100,752 total aircraft, including 16,731 fighters. Japan, in the same year, produced 28,180 total aircraft, with only 5,174 fighters. The United States possessed 8 times Japan's economic output and was outproducing Japan in fighter aircraft by more than 3 to 1, all while maintaining superior quality in each aircraft produced. Jiro Horikoshi, the Zero's brilliant designer, reflected after the war, "I created a fighter for a nation that lacked resources. The Americans created a fighter for a nation with unlimited resources. My design was an elegant solution to poverty. Theirs was a powerful expression of abundance. In war, abundance wins." His words perfectly encapsulate the fundamental difference in the underlying philosophies of the two nations at war. The human cost was equally stark. By war's end, Japan had lost approximately 25,000 naval aviators. The United States lost 8,150 naval aviators in the Pacific. But the composition of these losses revealed the true tragedy. Japan lost 90% of its pre-war trained pilots by mid-1944. The United States never lost more than 15% of its experienced pilot cadre at any point. By 1945, Japanese pilot training had utterly collapsed. New pilots received 30 to 100 hours of flight time before combat, compared to 600 hours for their American counterparts. Many kamikaze pilots had never even fired their weapons before their final, fatal mission. This wasn't just a quantitative difference, it was a qualitative abyss. The dominance of the Corsair forced fundamental changes in Japanese tactical doctrine. By 1944, standing orders explicitly prohibited engaging Corsairs unless holding a 3.1 numerical superiority. Even then, pilots were instructed to make one pass and disengage if unsuccessful. The Corsair rules distributed to Japanese pilots in late 1944 acknowledged complete inferiority. Never attempt to outclimb a Corsair. Never attempt to dive away from a Corsair. Never engage in head-on attacks. Their armament is superior. Never fly straight and level for more than 20 seconds. If bounced by Corsairs, conduct a split S and attempt to escape at minimum altitude. Attack only when holding overwhelming advantage and surprise. These were not the directives of an Air Force expecting victory, but of one fighting for sheer survival. By early 1945, the situation had moved beyond crisis to total collapse. Japanese pilots flew aircraft that hadn't been properly maintained in months, burning lower-octane fuel instead of the required high-octane for optimal performance, with ammunition loads reduced simply to save weight. Meanwhile, American Corsair squadrons operating from fleet carriers after December 1944, when they were finally approved for carrier operations, enjoyed overwhelming advantages in every aspect. Radar direction, rescue services, excellent maintenance, and regular rotations home after completing tours. It was a war of attrition where one side had an endless supply of finely tuned weapons and well-trained personnel, and the other was running on fumes and desperation. The overall Corsair combat record tells a conclusive story of total American dominance. 2,140 total aerial victories for 189 combat losses, a kill ratio of 11.3 to 1. Specifically, against the Zero, it was even more pronounced. 1,562 confirmed Zero kills for 124 Corsairs lost, a kill ratio of 12.6 to 1. And the starkest statistic of all, 64% of American pilots shot down survived, while only 8% of Japanese pilots shot down survived. The Corsair wasn't just a better fighting machine. It was a better surviving machine, designed to bring its pilot home. The Corsair represented the quintessence of American industrial philosophy. Solve problems through overwhelming material superiority, through abundance, through engineering that prioritized power, protection, and endurance. The Zero represented the pinnacle of Japanese philosophy. Achieve maximum capability through minimum resources, through elegant design, and through the unparalleled skill and spirit of the individual warrior. When these philosophies met in the brutal crucible of Pacific combat, material abundance proved decisively, tragically superior. During the American occupation, Japanese military personnel gained access to detailed information about American aircraft production. The numbers stunned them. Chance Vought alone had produced nearly as many Corsairs as Mitsubishi had produced Zeros. The cost per aircraft, $50,000 to $75,000 for a Corsair versus approximately $25,000 for a Zero, reflected not waste but quality. Americans spent more because they could afford to protect their pilots, to give them every possible advantage. The Corsair's dominance taught Japanese aviation fundamental, painful lessons that would ultimately shape Japan's post-war development and contribute to its economic miracle. 1. Technology trumps tradition. No amount of pilot skill, warrior spirit, or ancestral pride could overcome inferior equipment. 2. Quantity has its own quality. Mass production of good Continually improving aircraft beats limited production of even excellent, but static, aircraft. 3. Survivability matters. Dead pilots cannot gain experience. Protecting human capital is a strategic imperative. 4. Industrial capacity determines capability. The nation with the best factories, the most robust supply chains, and the most adaptable industrial base wins the long war. 5. Innovation pace matters more than initial advantage. Static superiority inevitably becomes inferiority in a rapidly evolving technological landscape. These were the harsh truths learned at terrible cost over the Pacific waters. The story of Japanese pilots facing the F4U Corsair is ultimately about the collision between tradition and modernity, between an idealized vision of warfare and the brutal reality of industrial age conflict. The Zero, for all its elegance, was an artifact of a bygone era, a design born of constraint. The Corsair was a harbinger of the future, a powerful expression of an industrial democracy's capacity for relentless improvement and overwhelming force. The Japanese pilots, who never expected F4U Corsairs to rout their Zero squadrons, experienced one of the most complete psychological reversals in military history. They entered the war believing in their superiority, technological, spiritual, and tactical. They discovered instead that they were flying obsolete aircraft, following outdated tactics, and facing an enemy with unlimited industrial capacity and an unshakable commitment to innovation. The F4U Corsair didn't just shoot down Zeros, it shot down an entire worldview. It proved that industrial capacity trumped warrior spirit, that technology defeated tradition, and that protecting pilots was more important than saving weight. These lessons, ingrained through unimaginable suffering, would paradoxically help transform Japan from a militaristic empire into one of the world's most successful peaceful democracies and industrial powers. The bent-wing fighter that Japanese pilots called Whistling Death became, in a strange twist of fate, an instrument of Japan's rebirth. By demonstrating the absolute, undeniable superiority of industrial democracy over militaristic tradition, the Corsair helped set Japan on a path toward becoming one of America's strongest allies and most successful economic partners. The pilots who survived their encounters with the Corsair, both American and Japanese, carried forward a hard-won wisdom. In the modern world, whether in competition or in conflict, the nation that prioritizes continuous innovation, robust industrial capacity, and the protection and development of its human capital will ultimately prevail. The echo of the Corsair's powerful engine and the silence of the Zero's defeat serve as a timeless reminder of these profound lessons.